Greetings, everyone. My name is Nethemba Twala from South Africa. I'm a journalist by profession, and I have been given the awesome and rather daunting task of being the moderator for this panel, where we're going to be discussing workforce development across the African continent. Now, I find it funny that they would give an African the task of being in charge of time, but we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best. We're going to do our best. Basically, what we are going to be talking about with these ladies next to me is doing business in Africa, in the African continent, and the lack of skilled human capital as a major challenge. Now, we're going to be looking at the challenges that stakeholders face when it comes to workforce development. We're going to be looking at how we can come up with solutions for a successful workforce in Africa, and how to reduce unemployment, match skills to the available jobs, and to increase the doing of business on our continent. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask these ladies to introduce themselves and briefly just say what the organization or company they come from does. Over to you.
Absolutely, pleasure, and thank you guys for being here today. This is clearly a very interactive group, and we're looking forward to some really interesting questions and ideas. My name is Lisa Schroeder. I am the Global Trade Policy Director for Dow. For those of you who are familiar, Dow is a chemical and plastics manufacturing company. We have significant assets on the continent of Africa, as well as quite a lot of engagement through rep offices in places like Ghana, Kenya, Ethiopia, where we're looking to create greater value along the manufacturing value chain. I'm honored that we're actually a long-standing corporate sponsor of YALI as well, particularly because it's amazing to engage with the talented young people who are here, but also through the regional centers in Africa. Roz?
I'm Rosalind Doctor. I'm the director at IBM. I don't know if anybody knows of an IBM product that you've used. Anybody want to raise their hand? Oh, I'm so happy that you guys know of an IBM product. We are a data company. About 87% of all bank transactions touch an IBM system. A third of all telco transactions, and 9 out of every 10 retailers touch IBM. So the data that's traveling from your country to ours, from ours to yours, often goes through IBM. It's a pleasure for me to be here. IBM has a presence in many nations across Africa. We want to expand our presence. And as a former Peace Corps volunteer from Zambia, I have to say mwapoleni to the Abena Zambia. Yay! Natatela Makai.
I'm Sabrina Roshan. I'm the Senior Director of Expansion Strategy at a startup called Andela. Andela is a venture-backed company that is now in Lagos, Nairobi, Kampala, Accra, Kigali, and Cairo. And what we are is an engineering services company. So we identify top tech talent across the continent, and we spend a good amount of time training, both on the technical side and the soft skills side, and employ these developers as our full-time employees as they provide engineering services to companies all over the world. We have over 1,300 developers across the continent. We have more than 2,000 staff, and more than a quarter of our software developers are women, which compares to less than 10% in North America. So that's Andela. And yeah, we look forward to continuing to grow on the continent, and looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, ladies. Now we're going to start. They say that the best place to start is always in the beginning. So that's where we're going to start. The first question I'd want to ask you is, what skills are in high demand in the companies or organizations that you guys work with or are working in? And also maybe just a look into the aspects of a successful workforce that you guys are looking to work with the companies in Africa.
That's a great question. And to put it in perspective, too, I know we talk a lot about workforce, and Administrator Day mentioned a number of the statistics around youth and the need to create a lot more jobs. This is not a unique challenge in Africa. Skills development is a problem right here in the United States. Particularly a company like mine, Material Sciences Innovation, we're looking for engineers, real technical skills. It's one of the reasons why we do a lot in terms of STEM education, particularly trying to get or encourage young women to stay with math and science type courses to develop those technical skills. It's one of the reasons that we've been very proud of the engagement with YALI, kind of on two fronts. One of the benefits of the regional leadership centers is it gives us great opportunity to engage with particularly students who are looking to develop or define career path. That's a great opportunity to talk about the technical skills that would be required coming into an enterprise like ours. It's also a great opportunity to look more broadly, given the entrepreneurial drive in YALI, is how we can do more to work across the value chain. You know, for a company like Dow, a big part of our growth in the continent is being able to partner up with young startup companies, particularly ones that are looking to innovate the next generation of products. We really look to partner on an innovation level, you know, anything from a better sneaker to plastics recycling infrastructure that'll bring more value to the continent, eliminate waste, and instead turn it into value. These become great opportunities to work together in a way that creates value change that brings jobs across that entire spectrum.
So we also at IBM need engineers. We need data scientists. But IBM is part of a group of companies in the United States and around the world that are looking at our job qualifications and what we look for, and we're trying to say, what skill do you need to be an IBMer, as opposed to what degree do you need? We're moving more to looking at skills. Can you be a cybersecurity expert without necessarily having an advanced degree? Can you be a user interface leader? Can you be a design thinker? Can you be a mobile app developer? Can you manage some part of quantum computing? Can you manage AI? And not only are we asking that, we're also offering skills development for our own employees, for mid-level employees of companies we partner with, and for new people on this journey to skill development. And we're offering it for free via the cloud for anybody in Africa. So when you go home, if you go to digitalnationafrica.com, you can't go here, it won't work when you're here. But when you go home, digitalnationafrica.com, it lists many, many courses that you can take for free. Data science, computer, cloud, app development, all of those I named. It also provides a sandbox, and that's just a space, cloud computing storage, for you to try to develop your own app, or to add cybersecurity to an app you might have already developed, a place to play with free open source tooling and to develop something. And then third and most importantly, you started off the panel by talking about a skills gap. Having lived in Africa, and you all know this, there are plenty of skills. It's just making sure that we, IBM, and those that are hiring know where those skills people are and that can put together the skill profile of the ideal candidate. So what you also need is matching. We need to find you in whatever country you are, because some of this work can be done remotely. And that's also, we put our artificial intelligence into this free online tool to do matching. So maybe if you go into this tool and you're like, wow, I'd love to take any class, what skill is in need? What are people really hiring in? Is it mobile app development? Is it cybersecurity? This will tell you that. And then if you do have skills, it'll tell you who is looking for those particular skills.
Yes, Andela actually came out of a conversation around this gap between what traditional tertiary education systems were teaching and what the market is looking for as it relates to being a full stack software developer. So we have tons of university graduates who have bachelor's degrees or master's degrees in computer science, and they don't have the requisite skill set to actually meet what the market is looking for. And so we also actually have no educational requirements to get into the Andela program. And we have incredible stories of the fishermen, the janitor in our Nairobi office, who came in and took the psychometric exam and just blew it out of the water. And so that is something that we're addressing directly by identifying who we think has the aptitude to become a good full stack developer, and then spending 6 or 7 months going from 0 to 100 before they're ready for client engagement. What we're also very afraid of is a brain drain. Most of our clients tend to be in North America, as much as we are trying to expand that portfolio, the portfolio outside of North America. So all of our developers work in our offices remotely and basically provide all of these services without necessarily having to leave the home country. And the idea is that they go and they build their own Googles and Facebooks and things like that. However, this is a select group of young people who are getting into this program. We're still at 1,300, and there's so much more untapped talent. What we've also launched is something called the Andela Learning Community, where it's also free, it's online. It's involving partnerships with both Google and Facebook on the specific types of programming languages that they're interested in. And so they're providing the curriculum. We also work with sort of learning platforms like Udacity and Pluralsight. And then Andela comes in and basically is marrying, you have the providers of the curriculum, you have the platforms, and then who's going to be able to do the learning science? Who's going to ensure that people are participating in an active way? And what this allows us to do is to target people who, first of all, might not be in capital cities, who might have other jobs that they can't leave, who might have a series of dependents. All that to say, we've actually found that these remote online communities are leading to a workforce that we actually didn't even see coming. It wasn't even part of our original business plan and came about very organically because the need is there. And so, yes, we are coming in to intercept this gap between market demand and what the tertiary education systems are supplying. But at the same time, there is a huge need for people who want to self-learn and self-train. And it is the responsibility of companies like ours to be able to provide that curricula if we actually think that we can change sort of business as usual on the continent.
Awesome. And while still looking at the Andela program, Sabrina,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask how your company sort of works with the government back in Africa to ensure that the people that you're looking for as a company are being groomed in order to come and be a part of a program of that nature.
Yeah, so the first few countries that we opened up in, because we are very much a sort of Silicon Valley-esque venture-backed company, there wasn't much engagement beyond the fact that we pay all of our taxes and do everything we need to do. However, the government of Rwanda was very interested in an Andela office in the country, and so we launched a large-scale public-private partnership. And we created a Pan-African hub in Kigali because there are countries where we might never be able to open an office, at least not in the next 5 or 10 years. And so the government has agreed to provide work permits for anyone from the continent who gets into the program. And they are basically being supported fully as full-time Andela employees. And the government is supporting the training of Rwandan developers. They're supporting us in terms of working with the local universities and trying to recruit there. We're working together in terms of making sure that we're taking advantage of really sort of positive investment incentives for companies like us. But generally, that's sort of our large-scale public-private partnership. Overall, in our other countries, the engagement is more, we tend to be invited to help advise and then represent sort of the tech ecosystems that are burgeoning or like fully blown out in countries like Ghana and Nigeria, and very much sort of are happy to work with governments in showing that it can be done because there were so many non-believers.
We have a different model with our Digital Nation Africa program. We do sign an MOU with the government, a memorandum of understanding, before we launch the program to make sure that the training we provide meets the needs of that local environment. And we also look to have NGOs, non-government organizations. And IBM has had the pleasure of sponsoring YALI and speaking to YALI over the years. And I know some of you come from this NGO world or are looking at starting these. So we welcome to have you collaborate with us, either to provide the content, make sure that the badges that we are providing are going to be useful in that environment, and to feed your information into that matching program to find the jobs. So in South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, the list goes on. We have MOUs with the government and sometimes even with the state government, like Lagos State in Nigeria. That's an important component.
Interesting. And the next question we might want to look at is, how competitive is the workforce in the respective sort of companies or businesses that you guys work in? And what is the retention issue and how people can work towards combating that? Lisa?
From my perspective, the workforce, the competition is a good thing. It's a healthy thing, because I think it also encourages the companies to continue to look at what's the value proposition for being an employee with us. And it is the opportunity where we can look at development and learning engagement, whether it's kind of picking up other skills, to look at the wider range of jobs that are available once you've kind of been hired into, particularly an organization of this size. I think it's also to that point about sort of when you think about the value chain, there's also that huge benefit of, you know, those that have grown up or developed the skills under a company, then looking at creating a new opportunity. Maybe there's an idea or a product line or an environmental technology that, you know, going off but still being able to partner to do becomes an incredible engagement. And I think that helps sort of build not just this generation of the workforce, but up and coming too. The more they see the difference and the wide range of jobs that are out there, career paths, the more exciting it gets about really investing in, just as my two colleagues were saying, investing in the skills rather than just specifically the degree.
So I'd like to offer a few specific stories. IBM, I keep saying IBM. I don't know if anybody knows what IBM even stands for. Those that use our products, I hope would. It stands for International Business Machines. But within IBM, if you are an IBMer, you know that IBM stands for I've been moved. We believe in circulating our employees across the globe, within departments to different departments. And I can give you some examples. Our country general manager of Ghana is a Ghanaian. She's related to one of the current ministers by brother, cousin, you know, so they're all related. But she has now just been moved to New York. We were looking for her to come join us at an event, and she has a new job in New York City. Our head of our Kenya lab is a Kenyan lady. And how does one get promoted within IBM, right? How do we get those skills? Is IBM treasures what we call Wild Ducks. I don't know if anyone, I think you all were here, and last week was the 50th anniversary of the United States putting Neil Armstrong on the moon. You might have seen some TV coverage on that. It was IBM teamed with NASA. It was our computers and our system that actually helped the land rover land when they weren't sure if it should land, because they took as much data as they could. There was a question on whether they should abort, if you follow the news. And the group decided, based on our data, that they would continue the mission, and they landed. But if you hear the interviews of those people, they were classified as wild ducks, right? They had a little unorthodox way, perhaps, of doing things. And creativity, we've heard that a lot, it can be rewarded when you have a skills and a foundation to be creative on top of. So we treasure that at IBM, and I welcome this conversation here with you all to see how you can bring some of that wild duck, if you have that in you, into IBM.
Awesome. Awesome. And just before we head into the Q&A session, I think maybe the best other question we could look into is what practical advice you ladies would give to young people from Africa who are looking into acquiring the particular skills that the companies that you work for are looking for.
From our side, it's definitely grit. What we try to teach our developers is to be open to constantly learning, because the technologies are changing so much faster than anyone, any company, any educational institution can keep up with. And so we actually spend a lot of time teaching folks how to A, self-learn, because you're gonna have to, and B, is to be open to that in a sort of psychological way. Actually, even yesterday we had a training session for leadership on being open to change and how to get there, and sort of workshopped it out. And so that's the big one, is grit and being open to constantly learning new things.
We are all going to talk about skills, but let me add a word that I haven't heard as much of, although we've spoken about it. It's collaboration, right? I heard people saying we work with ecosystem partners. That ability to collaborate and to team, so that it's not just your skills, it's the skills of your neighbor beside you, and you knowing what skills they have. It's also, I mean, I couldn't have survived my 2.5 years in Zambia if it wasn't for my neighbors and everyone that taught me skills and helped me. That collaborative nature, and then wanting to put that collaboration to a higher purpose. One of IBM's values is innovation that matters for the world. So you need that skill, you need that ability to collaborate to reach a goal that matters to your client, that matters to your nation, that matters to you.
And I'm going to tie both of those together really quick and make the very tangible recommendation, and specifically really speaking to the ladies in the room today, what we can do to learn from each other, to share both on a professional but also a personal development. Sharing skills, sharing stories, sharing that grit and creating that confidence in each other to really aspire to areas where you might think I couldn't do that job, but your friends around you will tell you that of course you can. There's an organization called the Organization of Women in International Trade, OWIT. For anyone who may be familiar, OWIT actually has a fantastic chapter in Nairobi. Nairobi chapter actually hosted their OWIT's entire global women's conference last year. And really what that does, we have a very similar organization. The chapter here is called WIT, Women in International Trade. And I've been lucky enough to have been the president of WIT for the past year. I just stepped down in that role. And what really truly amazed me was just that community coming together, what we could do for each other. And I can guarantee when you get involved, whether it's OWIT or WIT or any organization out there, and I'll tell you, at least for WIT DC, we let the guys participate too. Y'all are more than welcome. The advantage is it's a shared space. You can have those conversations about trouble with a boss or concerns about an interview. We actually had a great discussion last night with a former chief of protocol from the US government. And when we asked her what skills does it take to do the job, she said, I'm not going to give you a job description or a resume. I'm going to talk to you about intangibles. Are you a decision maker? Are you a problem solver? Are you likable? No one's ever going to tell you that in an interview. You're never going to get that question in an interview. But any organization that is interviewing you is looking for, when they define likability, they mean, are you someone who can play with the team? We all want the Wild Ducks to get in there to really spice things up or to create new opportunities, but you have to be able to work with others. And the more you can kind of engage in these groups, these type of networking, mentoring opportunities, you're really building up a lot of shared skills, not just for yourself, but as Roz is saying, with your neighbors, sharing with the community in a way where everybody benefits.
Awesome, great stuff. Just before we close, I'd also like to go back to what you were talking about and ask you if you feel that skills, are they technical or more practical in nature, the skills that are required?
I think they're a little bit of both. Obviously, in the chemical industry, there is a very strong technical requirement, but you can pick up technical skills in a wide range of opportunities. One of the things that Dow does regularly, we call them product stewardship academies. They're actually us getting together with our customers to teach them about safe and secure handling of the chemical products that they're buying. We do that deliberately because, quite frankly, safety is a huge principle of ours, and we want everybody to be safe in that process. But a big part of those academies is to share those skills so that everybody's improving their own qualifications. You can generate these skills in a lot of ways, whether it's technical, like through a product stewardship academy, or the practical ones, just from taking opportunities, apprenticeships, engaging with others, joining a fellowship. There's a lot of ways to pick up these skills, and it doesn't, again, necessarily have to be tied to a degree program.
I think you raise an interesting thing about what does technical mean, right? A lot of countries, including the US, has some kind of technical schools, TVETs in South Africa, and there were a lot of money. Sometimes in the US we say, oh, that's repairing an AC unit, right? That's setting up the lighting, that's technical. We see that one thing that we're trying to do, and we encourage more to think about collaboration, is changing the view of technical education to be more encompassing. The idea of technical education really was learning a skill that you can go out and work more quickly. And we also see that you can combine that technical education, whether it's learning a data scientist skill, a computer science skill, or a soft skill, what we call design thinking, and doing that what used to be a 2-year technical education after secondary school, combining it with secondary school. We call that model what we call P-Tech, Pathways in Technology, Early College High School, because in the US the technical school is college, high school is secondary school, P-Tech. But we have done this in the United States without an exam to measure aptitude. We've done it just on lottery. Any high schooler from depressed communities in New York to mixed communities in other states. And we've taken it global. Egypt's opened the first P-Tech in Africa a couple weeks ago, where you take your secondary school and that vocational training, technical training, whatever you call it in that country, and you give it to a student who can consume it, not based on any aptitude test, just on their ability once they walk in the door, in either 4 to 6 years. And you do that in collaboration. You have local partners that are willing to be mentors and offer internships to these students that are getting this new way of learning, secondary school and technical school combined together. Think of it as 4 and 6 years all together in one, which they can learn in 4 years or 6 years, go right into the workforce, or go get a higher degree.
Yeah, for us, actually, I wanted to note that we have found that soft skills are a much greater indicator of success for our coders than hard skills, because the hard skills, it seems that we can somehow teach in a more tangible way almost, but it's the soft skills and the willingness to, especially when you're engaging with clients, to ask for feedback, to communicate openly, to work with teams, all of that, that seems to be a much greater indicator of whether they're going to progress sort of to the next level. And that also feeds into sort of leadership skills and things that we really, really pride ourselves in preparing our developers in.
And while still on that, what role do you think American companies can play towards encouraging better standards in terms of workforce development?
The workforce development in America, or in yeah, or in sub-Saharan and North Africa?
In sub-Saharan North Africa.
I think having companies like Andela sit at panels like this, but ones that are similar to this one, engaging sort of governments of countries that we are working in, which Andela does do, and sort of brainstorming and sharing lessons learned on how we've built our curriculum and what's worked for us, and figuring out whether it can actually feed into the public sector system.
Great stuff. Okay, ladies, you guys are done. Now that we're done with my questions, you're gonna get like grilled by, I'm thinking that everyone is probably really excited to start asking their questions and what they want to know from you guys. So we'll let the questions roll. We ready?
This gentleman here.
But I actually feel some attachment because she works in Kenya. There's some people in Kenya which are our neighbors, and perhaps we can also benefit from there. So what are you doing to say countries? What's your official plan? I know it can be one of the countries because we have our own civil war, but with the current peace agreement, we are hoping as young people and we are optimistic that things will change. So I'm just asking, what is your take on when it comes to South Sudan as the newborn of Africa?
So, I can start with that, and then, and we also have questions. We can see them here, so I'm going to try to weave some answers into the questions I see here. On your question is, how do we make sure every nation benefits, right? South Sudan, I would say any African nation. And the digitalnationafrica.com platform is available in your country as well. And as I started out, IBM is a data company. Data knows no borders, right? Transactions in Sudan are going across border. And data skills can be shared and serviced remotely, right? The job opportunities, if there's a match, and a lot of times it doesn't matter where you sit, or you can be moved. So I think there is opportunity, and the other thing that you suggest is governments need to prioritize education. I saw a question, now I can't find it. I'll pause there because I'm looking, traditional educations across the continent. I talked about adjustment. Someone asked about, how can Sudan and people in Sudan is by changing right now in most African nations and even in the United States, we separate the minister or agency that looks at primary and secondary education from the minister or agency that looks at tertiary education. And then where your technical schools and that training comes in is also separate. And what we are asking for, even in the US, is to change the way you can provide grants and funding for school programs so that you can do a 4 to 6 year school in 4 years at the secondary level so people can leave secondary school with the skill to get a job. So we encourage this collaboration and conversation on changing the nature of education.
And then maybe just on Slido, our first or the top question is from Anonymous. And they want to know, what about traditional education systems across the continent? Are there adjustments that can be made fundamentally to ensure that young people, sorry.
I think I kind of answered that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
What I think maybe picking up on that one, and I do think, and that's again the benefit of organizations like YALI, are opportunities for the companies to play, and this again is not just an Africa situation, this is North America and pretty much everywhere else on the planet, becoming part of the education curriculum. And you can see where this change is taking place from kind of the traditional book learning to more of an interactive engagement where, I know we do that as a company whenever we have, and I was lucky enough to be one of these people last year, talking to a group at the RLC in South Africa. And we want to make sure that as we're coming to the continent, we're having that opportunity to engage and discuss what does it take to do these jobs, and what are these jobs that are out there. I mean, I know when I first started in the workforce here in DC, I didn't even know trade policy was a job. That's actually worked out okay for me. So the more we can expose everybody to what the opportunities are and then engage in the practical conversation around how do you get there, what are other people's stories, that's a great way of starting to move the education system into the more practical application. We even see doing that at the elementary or the high school levels, particularly when as a company we're helping to build our communities, literally build the infrastructure for education systems. You want to create that mentoring role too, where you're actually giving each other the conversation. I think that's particularly important. There's a question about how are we empowering women specifically. For Dow, this is we have an incredible diversity and inclusion program within the company it's not just for women, it's the LGBT and every other disaffected community that hasn't had the same opportunities. We need to make sure that as we're looking at filling And particularly where there are cultural challenges, maybe looking at women in leadership roles, what are we doing to develop, not just to get them into the company, but then to provide the support to develop that confidence and leadership skills throughout. That's one of the reasons why I like organizations like WIT or OWIT, where you're getting that backing from the outside as well as from the inside.
So I'm going to pick up on a few questions I've seen here. One, je parle-vous pas français? I don't speak any French, but digitalnationafrica.com is in French. It's in Arabic, and thanks to the World Bank, it might soon be in Portuguese, so that it can really serve all of the different people that you find across Africa. Towards the women question, IBM was one of the first companies to hire a woman exec, to hire somebody with disabilities, and to promote people into leadership roles from these same communities, and we make a conscientious effort in our training programs and our management styles to be as inclusive as possible. So that's in different ways of communicating, whether, even on different communication tools to different languages. So I think there are so many different ways one can be inclusive, but you need to have a mindset towards striving to be inclusive, and that should be an objective. And that is a policy that one can promote, and it's a policy that one always needs to promote. There's even an Equality Act in the US that we're promoting right now, because we all have improvements that could be made there.
Yeah, to pick up on that, and the question around sort of that question and getting women to tech, that's exactly right. From day one, it was basically a corporate sort of mandate for us to ensure that we're recruiting as many women as possible. And there's sort of, you can look at it from a social perspective or sort of socioeconomic perspective, but there's also the business goals. I mean, the first female developer at Andela, or the first developer at Andela who got to what we call a senior developer level and was ready to be launched out into the rest of the workforce and leave Andela after 4 years, was a woman. And she was the daughter of a single mom in Nigeria. Her name is Tolu. She's amazing. She was on Free Zakaria. She's just amazing. And what we do is basically, honestly, on like a really sort of nitty-gritty level, you budget for recruitment and making sure that you have recruiters that are focused on women developers and going out into communities and ensuring that, and this basically also touches on the question around contextualizing programs to the context. So there are places in northern Nigeria, for example, I'm Muslim myself, where I know sort of what the norms are like, and you have all female boot camps, which is part of our recruiting cycle, so that women feel more comfortable coming in. You have women, we call them tech evangelists, who go out and say, look, we've done it, you can do it too. It's very, very strategic, and it's part of our sort of overall operational plan. You can't sit back and assume that it's just gonna happen naturally, because you are dealing with various operating contexts that might not necessarily feed into it. And as I said, our stats earlier on 25% of our developers being female, look at the stats in the West. This is a global issue, but companies generally should be budgeting and planning for this from day one.
So I'm looking at these questions coming in. Thank you all. These are great questions. I'd say that IBM is a data company. We're not the same data company as every company, but we have a policy around data responsibility and trust and transparency, that our client data is theirs, and that the insights from their data is theirs as well. And in today's culture, if you follow the news, this is important. So the question on indigenous culture and knowledge, your data now is being commoditized and commercialized. But through correct and appropriate and forward-leaning policies, we believe that if it's your data, that you control that data, and our clients' data should not be used to benefit someone else, and their insights remain their insights. And we support governments that have policies not that constrict data from going across border, because you need data to go across borders for economic development for all, for the small, medium enterprise to sell their services, their goods, their ideas across borders. But the data from that small, medium enterprise, if it's on someone else's technology system, it shouldn't be used to help another company. Your data, your insights, your culture, your context belongs to you, and we should make sure that that happens, whether through policy or contract, and that's something that IBM firmly believes.
And then somewhat anonymous again asked, what is your view on Indigenous culture and knowledge, and is there any effort you guys are putting into contextualizing your program to African context?
I sort of answered that with your data is your data. It's yours. But the other one is that we partner with NGOs as we develop that Digital Nation Africa platform to make sure we have the best training programs available for the jobs in that region and globally.
I think, too, to take that up, and in particular, when you think about it's not just an issue of Indigenous culture, it's, quite frankly, I know we're talking about Africa, but as you guys know better than anybody else, that's a lot of different cultures and a lot of different territory. And we need to look at any of our applications in an industry like ours, where we're looking to build downstream industries, create opportunities, and particularly solve environmental challenges. That's going to be very different in, say, a Ghana versus a South Africa. So we look to really adopt and adapt not just what we do globally into the context of the reality across Africa, but also, and this speaks to kind of the SME question, how do we work that the other way? How do we start creating solutions in Africa that can actually be applied to global challenges? SMEs play a big part of that, and I think particularly as you look at a small business, for many of us multinationals, that's one of the great opportunities to grow a small business is to become part of our supply chain. Whether you're a service provider or a technical partner, a customer, there's a lot of opportunity as a small business to engage the bigger resources of an MNC to up your game. Whether it's improving your standards about how you operate or partnering up to develop and innovate a new version of your product, that is a great way for SMEs to grow. Et je peux dire que ça, c'est jamais un problème si vous parlez le français au lieu de l'anglais. Ça sera une très bonne idée, c'est un avantage.
And then maybe just to look into the next question about the strategies your companies could use to overcome bad governance, corruption, and some backward cultural norms that reduce productivity, innovation in Africa.
Yes.
I've talked about technology, right? I'm IBM, I'm going to talk about technology again. And I'm going to answer that question in two ways. I've talked about AI, right? Everybody knows what AI is, right? Artificial intelligence? No, it's augmented intelligence. Companies especially like Dow and IBM have been here for over 100 years, so we can say this as the old folks in the room. To survive companies. For companies to survive for so long, you have to be a responsible player in society and know who to work with and how to work and bring technologies to the market. And that's one of our views on AI. We want to be responsible stewards, and it should be augmenting intelligence. So when you apply technology, when you steward it, when you develop it and bring it, so any of you developers out there looking for your next, whatever you're going to create, please do so with the betterment of society in mind and the long-term view. There's also other technologies, such as this technology called blockchain, which is a distributed ledger, which allows multiple people to see a transaction, just the level of what they need to see in a transaction. We're using this in Senegal, which is increasing the ability of the customs agency in Senegal to collect their taxes by a significant number, because just having that transparency increases appropriate payments. There are tools that technology can provide to help improve governance, tax collection, and more efficient governance. But technology is a tool to be designed and developed and used appropriately. It is not the answer.
I know they're pulling the plug on us too, but I'm going to make just one other very quick comment to address that bad governance question too, and that's, I think, the advantage for any of us as companies. We need to lead by example. If we get asked to make a payment like that, we won't do it. IBM and Dow, they're both on the President's Advisory Council for Doing Business in Africa. One of the reasons that we do that is to make very specific recommendations for how governments can improve that situation, particularly to eliminate corruption, bad governance issues, but to demonstrate the consequences versus the opportunity. A government can try to continue in that space, but they're going to reduce the investment, they're going to reduce the opportunity, reduce the job creation. The more we can lead by example and demonstrate what happens in those situations, why we stay out versus come in, we hope to drive and be part of that change so that everybody operates on a level playing field.
Okay, ladies, I believe that workforce development is an issue that is not just an African problem, but is a global issue. And we could talk the rest of the afternoon. We could talk the rest of the afternoon about this, but thank you so much. And I believe anyone else who might have any more questions or anything else they'd like to add can just,
One there.
well, we're gonna give you guys an opportunity to network with them separately once we're done with, after everyone else has spoken. Thank you. That's cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Matatela, merci beaucoup. Obrigada.